I had a chat with Danny about this talk because it's so much fun being in this field of research just because I've seen the evolution of it over 25 years now, where people are looking at research in so many different ways. But the thing I like to think of myself as is I'm a total nerd about studying people. I also tell people that come through my class that once you come through my class, you're done for life. Anywhere you go, you're going to be messed up, and you're going to look at people and go, why is that gentleman sitting like that? What is he exactly doing? I wonder what he's thinking right now. And your life will proceed to go uphill instead of downhill. See, you thought I was going to say it's going downhill, but it's not. So I wanted to share this talk with you. It's actually one of my favorite because I think this is something that's very dear to me in terms of the work that I do. I love what I do. I have so much fun. If anybody wants to know the kind of work that I do, I literally have come out of 3 full days working shifts in a Tulsa warehouse, watching Cottonelle toilet paper being manufactured. I know. Don't get excited. It's interesting. But I will say I've had so much fun because I've learned more about warehouse processes. And the interesting thing was we were just studying warehouse realities. We're trying to understand how people actually function in a warehouse. That's what we were doing. So we're studying human behavior because guess what? We are complex. I'm amazed that I actually still have a job, quite honestly, because you'd think that we'd been figured out by now. And it's the technology that's the hard part. Nope, we got it all wrong, guys. We are the complex machines. And boy, we change all the time. And yet, we're creatures of habit. I don't know how that happens, but that's what we're trying to keep up with. And that's the fun I get to study. And I work with a number of different clients in different verticals and have a blast. Why did I say all that? Because the one thing I always get a chance to do in my travels and my classes is I talk to people about humanity. We study humans. So what does it mean to be human? What does it actually mean? What is the part of you that embraces being human and goes, wow, I love being human? I want you to think about that because that's what we're going to talk about. But we're going to bring it into your professional context slowly but surely. And I want to know a little bit more about that because that's the part I'm absolutely intrigued by. So no, I'm not doing this talk on my own. You have to work with me. Yeah, after lunch, I'm smarter than that. I know the food might trump me, so I'm going to do my best. Did I just say the word Trump? Okay. I know. Oh, okay. Think of the last time, no more about that. Think of the last time you felt really good about something. Can you all close your eyes, work with me? It's your afternoon Zen moment. Reflect upon the beauty of this morning. I've instructed yoga classes as well. I'll do a better job with my voice. I'd like you to now think about a moment, the last time you felt good about something. Think about that moment and take it apart for all of 30 seconds. And I love it. I'm watching some of you and you're like, damn it, she's serious. She really wants me to do this. Yeah. So my ask of you is, think about that. And I want you to think about that as I ask you some more questions. I'm going to take a leap of faith and say the following. Raise your hands. Did anything have to do with emotion in that thought? Anybody think of an emotion? Maybe happiness, maybe sadness, maybe excitement, right? Maybe passion, right? So emotion is something that keeps us human. It's a human element. Did anybody find that they were thinking about a moment of meaning? Right? A moment of meaning that sort of meant something to you personally. It gave a little bit more substance to a particular moment. Probably left you feeling good too, because I'm going to relate it back to the emotion. Anybody have a sense of purpose with the thought that they just came up with? Sense of purpose. Love it. Sense of purpose. You're doing something because you wanted to do it. That moment was special to you for particular reasons that you need not share right now, but I ask you to keep on reflecting about. because I really want you to just soak into that moment as much as you can. Okay? Did anybody have a moment of choice? Possibly an opportunity even, where you were like, road A or road B? Right? She's like, whoops, can I pick more than one? Right? Absolutely, right? There's no reason why you can't. Moments have emotions. Moments have meanings. Moments sometimes force you to make a choice about something, and a lot of times moments have a purpose, especially if they're going to be memorable ones. You're going to think back, you're going to reflect on something. Reflect. Not nearly enough of us get a chance to, time-wise, reflect on things. Very hard, right? We're running constantly. So I'm asking you for that moment of reflection. Think about all of these. What are they? And we are not limited to these 4 in any way. So if any of you go, excuse me, I'm sorry, I disagree, there's like a 5th and a 6th and a 10th. Absolutely right. But these are ones that continuously and repeatedly come to the top. They surface to the top because there's something important about it. And you notice I started with emotion. We are emotional people, right? Even for the coders amongst you, even for the designers amongst you, even for the marketers amongst you, products, but whatever you are, there's always going to be a level of emotion in everything you do. Sometimes it's neutral. Sometimes it's highly positive. Sometimes it's highly negative. In every moment. In the warehouse that I was just visiting right now, is this better if I talk like this? I can hear my voice better somehow. I'm just going to be looking at Danny the whole time while she's knitting. I'll be like, okay, Danny, I'll do my best. I'll sort of tilt this way. I'm going to look very odd on the video, but nobody make fun of me. So the key here is, even within the warehouse that we were just visiting, we happened to see an incident happen, and an incident being a woman took out a guy with a forklift. Yeah, so what did I just hear from all of you? Gasp, right? Right? What did you feel? Possibly empathy, a little bit of pain, like ouch, oh my gosh, sadness for that person. Every moment has emotion. We soak in those moments. And we don't even realize it. Sometimes emotion sort of comes and passes us by, and we don't even reflect on it. We don't give ourselves a chance to recognize that, you know what? It's a big part of who we are, that we're creatures of emotion. We also like to bring meaning to things, guys. Sometimes we like to avoid looking at the meaning of things because it's more painful to look at the meaning than it is to skip it over. But we look at the meaning towards a greater purpose sometimes. And a lot of times we are faced with choices. If my kids were here, they would roll their eyes. Because that's my favorite line to them. You always have a choice. Pretty much 2. You pick one or you pick the other. If I say that one more time, they're going to throw a brick at me. But the truth of it is, we do have choices, right? There's always a choice. You're never going to have to say, I had one door to pick, and no, guys. But these are things that we have to consider. How are you guys doing? So here's my next question. Think about the last time you felt that way at work or about work. I'm going to give you a few seconds to think about that. The last time you were at work, emotion, meaning, purpose, choice. This is the response I typically get. Ah! Right? I love to scream for more ways than you can possibly imagine. I have it up in so many different places. I just love this visual because sometimes there's just no other way to say it other than possibly 4-letter words that we won't do right now. But that's the response I get. So why is it that we can reach into those moments of emotion and purpose at certain moments in our life, but then when we suddenly try to relate it to work, what happens? We sort of lose it. It's like shebang, gone, right? So we need to think about that now. Why can't we have those moments at work? And I'm not just talking about the physical foosball table or whatever the new thing is and the right? I mean, you know, like, I work at a workplace where I can, like, drink beer until, like, 10 o'clock. That's great. But the question is that meaningful? Is that emotional to you? Depending on your state of affairs and your mental state at that point in time, maybe a lot of beers is emotional for you. But barring that, oh my God, beers, I already said it, Danny. Beers, once, alcohol, done. So the key here is we're always thinking about these emotions outside of work, but we don't really relate to them inside of work. But why is that, guys? So that's my challenge to you. Why is that? Why do we find that a little bit harder? Did anybody find it harder? Sort of hard to bring those, you're like, well, it's design. I mean, I do it. But the question is, what is the greater meaning? What is the purpose that we serve? We're not always human at work. My argument, my challenge is, work has truly become a little bit more robotic. We are more measurement driven. What do I mean by measurement driven? You have 22 days to get this particular feature coded, and you're already nodding your head, and I haven't even finished my statement. Right? He's like, yeah, been there and done that, next. Right? What does it mean? You have or you got, you know what? Sorry, you got a budget, it's 5K. Work it, do it, whatever you can, but we got to work. Or you know what? There's 3 new features. This was one of my favorite with one of my clients who's they create safety products for children, car seats, strollers, et cetera, right? And they were mandated 3 products in 4 weeks. 3 products? Why 3? I don't know, 3. 4 weeks. Why 4 weeks? I said 4. I'll make it 3 if you push me again. So the question is, we are constantly against these measurements. How many times in your own roles, I know there's a multitude of roles in here, how many times in your roles have you actually been able to go back and go, I'm sorry, I need 6 months instead of 3? Or that's going to take a little bit more? Once. I love it. You had a choice. You had a choice. I love hearing that, to be honest with you. We should talk. Because I always take the other road. I'm not the nice person, believe me. But the key is we got to think about these. We're always up against numbers. Somebody's always, what happens? We don't get the time to reflect. We sort of lose out on the purpose and the meaning. And suddenly the choices aren't choices anymore. It's sort of a one-road situation. This is where we're going, guys. Not to say that you're not having fun and you're working with really nice people, but where's that human element? Where are those human elements, and why are we letting go of them when they don't need to be missing? We want to keep them with us. We want to keep them close to us. Okay? So it doesn't matter who we are, what we do, we want to root ourselves in the human story. Okay, show of hands. How many of you, actually, if you don't want to put up your hand, I won't make you, but how many of you are the suckers who will suddenly watch the video of the little kid who can barely stand up, splish-splashing in the puddles on Facebook, and it goes viral, and you're just like, oh, right? And you watch, and you're like, oh, what a nice moment, right? So many different things that we watch just randomly. Why? It's a story. It's a story that actually resonates with us for all of maybe 10 seconds. But for that 10-second point of time, if I said a start and a finish, you find yourself in a happy state, right? Or with all of the media out there right now, some of those stories can really, they go deep. They go deep. You see somebody who's in need and somebody offers that helping hand, and you suddenly see that hand being grabbed and you see it being pulled up, and you feel like humanity's good. You suddenly have that moment of reaffirmation that the world is full of good people because you're seeing some small story that impacts you in some way, shape, or form. It makes a difference. It speaks to you. Again, some of you might be looking at me with 2 horns and 10 ears going, I'm so sorry, but I don't do that kind of stuff in my job. I'm asking you, think about that. Think about how that plays with your role. Think about how it makes a difference to the way you look at things. There's so many times I've been with people of all different levels, marketing people. It just doesn't matter. And suddenly, sometimes they'll go through a particular situation and they'll go, wow, that was interesting. But it makes them think. It makes them reflect. We need to reflect on our humanity. We need to reflect on the human elements, the things that keep us human. We need to reflect on them as much as possible, because it will bring more meaning to everything we do. We love stories. How many of you like a good story? Right? You're at a bar, somebody starts a story, and suddenly you're like inching closer. You don't want to really cut into a conversation, but you're like, right? Or somebody in your family, you're having a family get together, and somebody starts a story, and you're suddenly riveted. You're like, no kidding, no way, that did not happen to you. Right? All these silly stories, and it could make somebody look silly. It could make somebody look completely ridiculous, but it doesn't matter. It's a story, and you are an observer in that plot, and you're seeing what's going on because you're reliving it as they tell the story. So my big question, obviously, is this all sounds great, Meena. Awesome. Love it. But how do we bring our humanity into work? We haven't really answered that question, have we? How do we bridge that gap? Because sometimes I meet a lot of people who'll be like, well, you know, I don't really talk to people when I work. I just do my stuff. In fact, I work remotely, and I sort of am chatting with people, but it's just sort of cerebral. Just doing my stuff, and I really don't interact, so it doesn't really affect me. But it does affect you. And the way we actually advocate, probably already guessed what the punchline is, but I'm going to say it anyway, just because it gives me so much satisfaction. The way we advocate actually bringing humanity into work is doing research. So, how many of you disagree with that statement? I can handle it, guys. I'm strong. Oh, you're just all agreeing with me because I'm standing up here talking to you. Let's talk about it. It's a very broad topic. I love it. You're absolutely spot on. Research can be viewed in so many different ways. I completely and wholeheartedly agree with you. So let's talk about that. We're talking about research studies that explore human behavior. We want the human story. There's definitely lots of research that we can come back with that's quantitatively driven, gives us numbers. But I already said that we have a lot of numbers that we're working up against all the time. We already have numbers. We have numbers actually coming at us so fast that half of us don't even know what to do with those numbers, is my challenge. The data that we have is at our fingertips, but we don't have enough people to look at it and make sense out of it. That is most definitely important to look at. But it doesn't get into those intricacies of the why. The rationale, the motivation, if you will. What's behind those numbers? You're not going to get that from anything other than interaction. That is my challenge. I believe that very firmly. And we need to establish a relationship. When I talk about human behavior, it can be with anything, guys. So on one of my recent trips, I was on Southwest Airlines. And I was connecting through LaGuardia for some ridiculous reason out of Boston. It was an odd choice. And I barely had 30 minutes to make my connection. This was about 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago. I've just come off of ankle surgery, so I'm still a little slow when I have to run between terminals. And of course, my luck, I'm at one end, and of course, I am to run all the way to the other end. So I am moving as speedily as I can. And suddenly, halfway through, I recognize, I wonder if my luggage is going to make it. Because I'm actually going for a longer trip, so I sadly needed to check my luggage. So I went, pouring rain, all the delays are happening. What happens? I go up, I'm getting onto a prop jet. So you know the guy standing there waving you on, right? He looks at me, because I'm sort of looking at him whether I should ask him whether my luggage will make it, like I'm sort of not sure who to ask. And he looks at me, and he sees, probably on my face, that I am just killing to ask a question. And he goes, and I go, just curious, 20 minutes in between my flight and this one, will my luggage make it? He goes, we'll do our best. So you know what that means. It ain't happening. The nice way of saying it nowadays, right? We'll do our best. Like, okay, well, it's not his fault. It's not like he made the plane late, so I'm not going to get upset at him. Like, fine, whatever. And I hadn't eaten anything I had planned to eat at LaGuardia, so this is not looking good. I'm now hangry in a big, 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 big way. But I'm like, contain it. You can do it. Get up onto the flight. In I go. What happens in the next 5 minutes as we pulled back was a story that I wrote back to Southwest. So simple. But he listened to my story. He heard what I said. I got onto the flight. The woman was kind enough to throw every peanut and pretzel she could at me because I looked like I was going to fall over. And I love it how they give you only 4 peanuts in a package, but we'll talk about that another time, right? So she gives me everything, and suddenly I see arms sort of waving. You know how your peripheral vision has a funny way of catching things that are going on outside in an airport, right? Happens. I look outside at pouring rain, and he's standing there, and he suddenly looks at me and goes like this. What do you think that left me feeling? How much do you think that costed him? He listened, he heard, and he responded in a very simple way. And I remembered seeing his name, because one of these crazy things I tend to do, chalk it up to a bunch of them, but anyhow, I wrote his name down and immediately on my phone started to write his name and the time and however I could identify this man. And I wrote a huge letter back into Southwest and I said, you don't know the value of these moments. Now, I ask you, do you think Southwest is going to go, oh my God, you're amazing. Oh, you know what you did to that woman that day was awesome. No, they're not going to do that because guess what? Was it an on-time departure? Did she make you late? Sadly, I know the back end of these systems too. That's what they're going to be focused on for the most part. They're not going to think about the importance of human-to-human relationship. They're not going to think about the importance of the story that I just told you. They'll go, oh, that's nice. We're really glad. And I got the form letter back after I wrote a very, very long letter. Not even a Dear Meena, right? Dear M. Kothandaraman. You know right off the bat that's just somebody like chunking out something on a something. I'm like, come on, guys. Really? You don't think I noticed? At least try Dear Meena. That might have worked a little bit better, right? But that's the importance that is given to these moments. Some of you might go, okay, Meena, that's it's a great story. Whatever. But I will ask you, if you put yourself in the same situation, how that would leave you feeling. And I will put money down that you will feel good. Research. What do? We try to just explore human behavior. We try in so many different ways, but there's a lot of different ways. Back to my friend with the purple Mac here. I totally agree with her. There's so many different ways. So the question is, how do we research? Because it's an open-ended word, right? How do we research? At the very simple approach, we're just going to learn from people. We're just going to learn from people. So if I ask this lovely gentleman here, why is it that you exactly chose this pen when you were writing? And I body slam him with a question specifically about my product because that is really all I care about. It's nice that you had a really tough morning and that your kids didn't get to school on time, but I really don't care. Just tell me about this. What I'm losing out on there is that I'm not learning about people. I'm learning about product. I want to learn about people. I want to learn about his perspective. Why doesn't he even, what does a writing implement mean to him? How does he take notes? Maybe it's not even for writing notes. Maybe it's just there because it looks smart. I'm not saying that. But he's like, no, just kidding. But the key here is we want to learn about the people. The people are the ones that are the more complex. Remember where I started in the beginning? People are the ones that are so complex. We want to get to the bottom of them. We're not asking him, what's wrong with the pen? How can I make the pen better? That's not what we're going after here. I want to know about him and a lot of other people who are like him and a lot of other people who are different. So what do? We study their reality. We study what they do. I might not actually sit with him right now and ask him these questions, but I might observe how he actually takes notes along all of his meetings throughout the day. What does he do when he's at a conference? Is it different from when he goes to a meeting? I want to know his reality. I want to know how he does things. Timothy, how Timothy's world works. That's important to me because I'm going to meet a lot more Timothys and I'm going to meet a lot more non-Timothys. And I want to understand how that all comes together. I also want to do depth of use. I want to empathize. I want to put myself in your shoes. How many of you felt a moment of been there right where you were with that Southwest Airlines story, but mine ended different than yours? With any airline, not necessarily, just nothing against Southwest, right? But how many of you could walk through that story with me and go, all the way to, wow, but mine didn't end up this way. Or, I heard, a worse story. You're not going to believe this one, right? So many different depths and contexts of use that we want to understand. We want more of those kind of stories, more of that depth. We can't get it from numbers. This is where we have to study people and hear about their stories and their realities and connect the dots. We also have to talk emotion. I know it's the first thing that I said. I made it third here. But emotion is so important. There are things that make a difference. There are things that are meaningful. There are moments when I saw the impact of the forklift hitting the man and the man flying and blood was spilled. There's an action going on here, and I'm just a researcher. That was not planned, by the way. And they are very, very high up on safety, this organization. Amazing. But the key here is we're trying to understand exactly how emotions play into this thing. How does it affect people? Have any of you had a situation where you're trying to do something and you're like so distracted by something that has just impacted you and broadsided you sideways that you can't focus on what's in front of you? What happens in those moments? I don't care how good that pen is. It might not function the way he wants to because there's something else impeding him at that moment. We need to understand those moments. And it's about nurturing a relationship. You guys don't know me, but if we started to talk and I started to hear more about your story, I would find that we will make a relationship at some point in time. We will connect in some way. Because it's not about me just asking a random person, oh, what do you do and why are you doing it? And I'm writing this down. I want to know your story. In all of the different types of work that we do, we try to understand people's stories. That is the kind of research that I think does keep the humanity close. Because other types of research are fabulous, and it's not to negate the value of them at all. But not all of them capture that essence of humanity. And that is what we need sometimes to sort of just write the, sort of go true north again and go, yeah, this is why we're doing this, guys, right? This is the reason why we're creating this brand new system called Epic for hospitals. It's not just this thing that doctors are like, great, Epic is coming to the office. I don't know how many of you have had that happen with your doctors now, but they are not jumping for joy. This is one more thing. It's not extra work. It's supposed to be meaningful for them and allow them to do the real work. That's what it is. So we need to help them along and help ourselves along too, because it makes our work more meaningful as well. Oh, Danny? Yes. I might have a little clicker failure here. We'll just do it the old-fashioned way then. I don't know what it was doing. So the question is, what do the human elements yield? What happens with those human elements? Let's see what's happening here. Is that me buzzing? I'll move away from here. I don't know what I just did, sorry. Should I keep on going or wait? Is it okay? I'll just keep on going. It's fine. I'll keep on talking. So anyhow, so what do these human elements yield? It's all great that we're talking about these different things, but what do they actually yield? So back to the great question about what research can actually give you and what kind of research are we talking about? There's two ways that we look at research. And one of the biggest values that I think it does is it inspires people. Show of hands again, how many of you have ever heard a story about somebody using the products that you guys create at work? And it makes you go, and think about things slightly differently. Does that ever happen? Right? It does happen, right? Those stories have to come from somewhere. And the more stories we can generate like that, the more valuable it is to us, because it does remind us that there are real people who are consuming our products and services and spaces and interfaces. It doesn't matter what we're talking about. An experience is an experience. The other thing is I think it excites us. It's so lovely when we can get excited about something. This is a very, very tough question, but I'm going to ask you guys anyway. How many of you absolutely get excited about what you do? Right? And I won't ask the bunch of you who didn't put up your hands. But the question is, why isn't it exciting for you? What is lacking? That's a very tough question to answer, but we want to be excited. We want to make a difference. I think all of us have that in us. We want to do good. We don't get up in the morning and go, so who am I going to hit today? Like, who's going down today? That's not how we tend to start our days. And if we do, then I'm just misjudging all of you. I don't believe that's how you start your day. I believe you start your day wanting to do something fabulous. Even if it's small, it becomes still meaningful for you. But the question is, how do we get that get up and go? We need some motivation. We need something that gets us going. And we also want to hear about more than just the obvious. How many of you, when you do research, tend to go back to your customers all the time and just focus on your customers? Does that ever happen? You just go to your customer population and go, we'll go and ask these customers. Oh, I know the customers to go ask this question to. But what we do is we limit ourselves there. We're not studying human behavior at that point in time. We're actually studying our customers. So, poor Timothy is sitting in front of me and he's probably wishing he didn't. But if I ask Timothy about his juice and I go, so I want to ask you about this juice, but how would you really like this bottle to be designed? Anybody ever have those kind of moments where you've got the person sitting there looking right at your product and you're like, but tell me what you really want. What isn't this doing for you? Well, he's already biased. He's already looking at the bottle. He's already used it. Yeah, he's going to give us valuable information, but we can't keep on resting all of our answers on this one person. We have to look at everybody. How about the people who decided that the bottle was crappy? How about all the other people? How about the non-users? How about the people who started using it and then found something better? We have to be inspired by those people. We want to go to more than just the people sitting in front of us. It's like me asking you guys, wow, how is the conference going? And tell me how we can make this better. And we might ask those kind of questions, but then the question is, I want to know what other conferences you've gone to. I want to know more. I want to know the people who decided that they might not be here to listen to me. What was the reason for that? What was their rationale? We want to understand the totality of the information and then whittle it down to the people who are really important to us to keep close to our company. We need to understand all of this. We know we can inspire people at that point in time. And then the other half of it is, with research, we can also inform. And that's an obvious, and I think that happens a lot more often. We can start to form some sort of relationship because now I have somebody who's buying the water bottle that I've created. I have somebody who's actually saying, okay, yeah, you know what? I am now a customer of yours and we're going to have a relationship. And I can bridge a little bit more with that. And I can bring you closer. I don't want to push you away. That would be terrible. That's not what you do. You bring your customers closer to you. You make it meaningful for them so that it becomes meaningful for you. It's reciprocal. Really basic. We also want to make sure that we use any information that we get through research as a rejuvenation as well. Sometimes, how many of you have been in a situation where you're just stirring the same water over and over again? Does that ever happen to you guys? You're like, oh, good, we're going to redo this product. Then you're like, and we did the product again, and it looks pretty much the same. You're just stirring the pot a little faster sometimes. But it doesn't really change up, right? It doesn't change things dramatically where you're like, oh. So where's that going to come from? I honestly sometimes feel really bad for designers and developers because there's so much pressure put on you guys who are in here and outside to just magically come up with great ideas. Sometimes that's a very hard thing to do. I was like, what did I say that was comical? I missed it. Damn it, I made a joke and I missed it? Oh my God. Well, the speaker just came on. I see. Okay. So, you know what? It's all good. It's being recorded if you really want to know what's going on. So the key here is there's so many different aspects. We can inform, we can rejuvenate, we can make things more empowering for people, because then, hey, suddenly I give somebody the opportunity to say, oh, guess what? We have something that we can rely on now. We have some stories that we can hear. And now we can relate it back to this product directly. Now this is taking us a step forward. This is now putting a little bit of extra punch in my life because I got something to go on. That's awesome. And it also helps you confirm, because guess what? We do operate in a world that does have constraints. Many, might I add. But we do want to confirm and go, yeah, I think this is good. This is a good direction to go in. Let's keep on going this road, because so far, it's all good. But the key here is, if we don't do this, then the question is, where does the humanity aspect come from? Because I know I'm so pro-research. I wonder why. I'm so pro-research, but the question is, if we don't do any of this, if we don't get these stories, if we don't get these human elements involved, then where's the human aspect to what we're doing? That is the tough question to answer. I don't have an answer for you. I don't know. Because then I think it becomes sort of meaningless at times. And I think that's not fun. The emotions are taken out for us. The choices are whittled. It just doesn't look as fun. So, as researchers, just a side note, we don't do a very good job sometimes. I'll put myself in this bucket as well. We just allow things to go on, right? So my friend back there who said that he actually went on road B instead of road A, right? Sometimes you got to stand up and go, you know what, guys? There is a better way to do this. There is a choice we have. We do have a choice. And you want to empower people to be able to say that, because then maybe it jazzes everybody up. Working with a company right now, they have an online collaboration tool. And this online collaboration tool enables people remotely and together to join together and share things and talk and have meetings, and you all use this kind of stuff. And the question for them is, it wasn't about just going, how can we make our tool better? But what it ended up really being, at the human behavior level, was studying the behaviors of busy people. What are busy people doing? Is it busy? And busy is a tough word too. If anybody wants to poke at it, feel free. Is it busy as I see it, or is it real busy, or is it just perceived busy? We can go in so many different ways. But the key is, at the end of this project, one of the best things we've heard so far is, we always ask the people who are owning the project basically to come out with us to do the research. Why? So they'll hear the stories. And the stories will propagate and come back into the organization and go everywhere. And then the key there was, one of the best things we heard was, if we hadn't heard some of these stories, I think we would have sort of gone back to what we do. And instead, it's given us sort of excitement. It's given us sort of a new life. And we love that. And they were very excited by it. It was interesting to see their faces as they were going through, because it was, big wide-eyed and very, very interesting. And they were so engaged. That is so important, because we all want a reason. We all want something to drive ourselves towards. So our responsibility, at least as researchers, is make sure that whatever research we're putting in front of people, so I'm touting the whistle about research and saying how fabulous it is and how it keeps the humanity aspect in any organization, but guess what? If it's not credible, then it ain't worth nothing. It's got to be credible. It's got to be well done. It's got to be somewhat accurate, at least mostly accurate, I would say, in so many different ways. We have to think about how somebody's consuming that information. We have to think about how somebody might take that information, move it, and diversify and say, you know what, this is not just about our customers, it's about all people. We've got a lot of information here. This is how we can move it forward internally. Sometimes it's also about just making sure that we don't exploit the people in front of us either. We're trying to create these relationships with all of our customers and with all the non-customers out there. We want to make sure we do a really good job of treating them with respect. That's part of the relationship, right? It's so important. And we want to make sure that everything is organized. And I say the word humility here so importantly. As researchers, we don't have the answers to every question. But what we're trying to do is talk to you guys, everybody who's here, and all the people who aren't here. We want to go to you and say, hey, tell us your story. If you think about the friends that you have and the people that you like to hang out with, do you find that sometimes you hear some stories that sort of sit in your mind that you might repeat in other circumstances, in other groups, and go, oh, I got a really interesting story to tell you? Does anybody ever do that? Carry a story from one group to another? You know, I got to tell you about a story that my mom and dad went through when they first moved here, and suddenly it's being told at work, right? Why do we do that? Why do we do that? Because we don't really have to. But it's our way of making things more personal. It makes a relationship happen. It starts to bridge something and bring people together in a way that you can discuss something. And there's a point to it. Hopefully. There's always some people who don't have a point. You're like, where are you going with this? But we won't talk about this people right now. So the key here is credible research, I think, keeps the human element in our work. Because my challenge is always, if we don't have research, we remove it all. We say we've got enough numbers, Meena, we don't need research. I hear that all the time, by the way. And I respect it, but I don't agree with it. I think you need to have something that brings the human element in. And there might be other ways, and I always would love to talk to people about this because this is actually a topic I just love talking about. But the key is find a way. It doesn't have to be necessarily only research, but something that allows you to keep the human element at work. Because otherwise, we tend to be more robotic, and we just focus on the numbers. And I don't know how many of you guys feel that sometimes, but I know many people who come through the courses, many of the clients that I work with, I hear this repeatedly, and I've always wondered, like, okay, what does that mean then? What do you do in that situation? How do you make it better? Because the truth of it all is you can't just keep on moving from one job to another and saying, I don't like the numbers here, don't like the numbers here either, you just can't do that, right? So then the question is, how? How do we actually make this make sense so that work does become meaningful for us? It's so important, I think, at any level when we're talking about what we do, that we have absolute passion about it. We should love it. What is it? Work is too many hours in a day to just be a job? I think I heard that at another conference, to be honest. And I loved it. I think that's so meaningful. So we shouldn't allow it to become that. Whatever it is, dig deep and ask yourselves, what can you do? What is it that you need? Is it a story or is it something else? But the key here is, I'm going to put money down that there's some people involved somewhere. And there's something about emotions. There's all this stuff that we need to consider. Because when we talk about purpose, we talk about choice. We have choices every day. How does that actually all come together so that it makes sense for people and makes things more meaningful? I'm going to leave you with those thoughts. My question for you guys, and I'd love if we have time for a discussion or any questions, how will you bring your humanity to work? Thanks so much, guys, and thanks to Danny for inviting me.
Plenty of time for questions. So go ahead.
So you're talking about stories and sort of credible research. I feel like I'm probably not the only person in the room where stories are part of what we do. I feel like it's a synthesized version of what you're talking about, where we put ourselves in the position of the user of a website, posit what their story is, but we're not necessarily getting that directly.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
So you're saying that you actually try being the user yourself? Am I interpreting your question correctly? Or?
Yeah, if you're doing design and user experience design, a lot of times, you're experience something and you think, I don't like the way this is working, you call it a user story,
Correct.
right? But it's not really a user story because it came from me.
Correct.
I'm a user, but I'm not the user, right?
Of course.
So it's sort of like we're synthesizing research.
We're reducing, yeah, we're simmering it to the basics, but the question is we're missing out on all that heavy detail, right? So an example that I love to use that I think is one of, at least it spoke to me, was you have that concept of people doing user stories. So if you're a UX designer, you sort of relive a story. And you can relive a story, but you want to know all the context of that story. We were doing work with a financial company, and their goal was to improve their day trader investment site. And they wanted to just better understand how people day trade so that they could do a better job on their site. They, as a company, though, were very focused on certain screens, which tends to happen, right? Certain moments in that experience, as they called it. But it was really this screen, that screen, right? Started going down that path. And what we actually backed them up to first, and it's not to say that we won't get to that. It's not to say that, oh, you don't need to ask that question. That's not the right question. But you can't start with that question. You have to start at the people level and say, how do you make decisions? How do you even make decisions for yourself, for your household potentially, for your family, whatever it is, in the confines of the person that we're talking to? I want to understand what you do in order to make decisions. So we went that route instead, where it was so fascinating for us, where people started to talk to us about their shopping habits. Some women that we met with, some men, women would say, oh, our shopping habits, oh, when, you know, oh my goodness, when I make decisions, it's like, don't even ask me, because when I go to the store and I need to shop, I typically buy 10 things and I return 8 out of 10 of them. I can never keep all 10. What do you think I'm taking away from that? I'm going to keep that as a nugget, and then I'm going to try to connect that forward and see how that story connects forward. Because guess what? When we actually trace some people all the way through, these little silly things that they think are silly about their behavior, oh, you know, I buy all 10 things and then I put them in the back of my closet, and that's the cost of shopping, I guess. I mean, I don't know. It tells you something about their behavior. You're now understanding a larger portion of that person that you can now share back with the team. That is what we miss if we just take one user story and at the very bottom say, this is how they're using it, I'm going to pretend to be them, I'm going to click in and go. You're missing the background. To answer your question.
This is a separate question.
Sure.
How do you know if it's... we want to get the questions too.
Oh, sure. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
It's a lot of pressure now.
Okay.
How do you know if what they're saying is authentic? Because I've talked to researchers and they'll tell you that, for example, in like a consumer shopping situation,
Yeah.
if you ask them, they'll say, "Oh, I checked the nutrition label. I'm looking at the price." They'll tell you what they think is the right answer.
Great point.
But how do you? But then when you watch them and they don't know they're being watched,
Yeah.
they buy the cereal their mom bought them,
Correct.
or the one that's their color. So how do you know they're saying?
That's a great point. I love the question. I totally love the question. So that is why, that's exactly why we do, you're like, I'm just going to, no, we'd like you to actually start singing after this, so could you hold on to the mic? No. So the key here is, that's exactly why we don't want to just go and sidestep somebody with a question, because they'll feel pressured to answer. But if I don't know anything about their background, if I don't know anything about the way they tend to do things in terms of the behavior that we're studying, it's actually very easy for people to just answer the question and give you something and you think, oh my God, I've gotten this magical nugget. By hearing a lot of their other stories, we're hearing their nuanced behaviors, and we can thread a needle that makes a lot of sense. I can very confidently say that is in the study design of what you put together for your research. That means you're doing the right activities with people. You're giving them the right opportunities to answer to certain things. You don't always just expect it to be verbal. I'm not just going to go, hey, John, I'm going to ask you a question and you have to answer. I'm going to give you time, maybe give you some homework to bring back to me. Maybe come and watch you at work and see what you do. See some of your observed realities of, wow, you say you're really super organized, but then I come and see your desk and it's all over the place. And then I ask you to tell me about different things. You're like, well, I'm not always organized. So if there are things that don't add up, then I can bring further meaning to that. And I can also ask you, I saw your desk was like this. You just said this to me now. Can you help me understand the two? And it's okay, because as people relax into that, and I don't know if you guys are like this, even if somebody comes up to me and suddenly says, well, I just really interested in understanding exactly where you shop and why you bought the dress that you're wearing today. Somebody just asked me that question and I don't know who they are. I'd be like, bugger off. I don't want to answer your question. I'm not very friendly. So, you know, I'd be like, oh, okay, I know I'm doing this research, but I don't know, or maybe I just can't think of a good answer, so I'm going to make one up. So give people that time and that space to be able to reflect on some things. A lot of times we'll do small homework assignments. We don't even start some of our research with me going, hi, I'm so-and-so, and I'd like to do this study with you. That's not how I'm going to start. I'm going to actually have you maybe do a collage or something and present yourself and say, I'm really interested in understanding what busy means to you. And in the course of your 15-minute intro, you're going to tell me so much about yourself that you don't even realize. And that's where we bring meaning. But your question is awesome, because that is what happens a lot of times. That's where we as researchers have enabled some of those bad behaviors. We've allowed things to go to that point where we're just like, hey, what do you think of this? Tell me what your ideas are. I'm really interested. And you're like, okay, I think I can answer this question. It's hard sometimes for people to quantify that until we know a little bit about who they are. That's where I don't know if that answers your question directly, but
Hit it sideways.
you got to hit it sideways, yeah. To me, I always use the analogy of it's like peeling back the layer of an onion. We're trying to get to the core, but if I, take the knife and go through the core, I'm going to start crying, which I do from time to time. So even in research studies, but that's besides the point. So I want to really go in slowly and just to have a chance to know who you are. And here's the thing I will share with you so happily is that people are wonderful. And as you think, oh, people are like, oh, they're trying to pretend to be a certain thing. You can only pretend for a certain amount of time before you fall flat. And I have really found that people are so genuinely interested and wonderful, because we can't always obviously disclose who the study's for, depending on how we're doing the study. And sometimes they'll ask us and I'll be like, oh, I'm not going to be able to answer that question, but we can get back to you afterwards. They'll be fascinated. They're like, this is so wonderful that you're asking us about who we are. Like, I feel like I have a chance to answer the question properly. And they enjoy it, which is, I love that. I want them to walk out having fun, because it's got to be meaningful for them too, not just for me or the person I'm working with. Yeah.
To what you just said. So at being a research firm, you have this independent lens on things.
Yes.
But if you're working for a company, what tips do you have to remove that bias that's going to be placed on you as a representative of X, Y, or Z company? Like, oh, you're from Microsoft, therefore I should answer a certain way.
Absolutely, absolutely. And sometimes it's just a matter of not disclosing. You don't have to say that you are from Microsoft. You don't have to say these things. You can just say, we are doing some independent research for our organization. And it's perfectly fair. I have had, I don't think it's dishonest. It's the fact that we will tell them. And sometimes what we might do is go through the entire thing and then share it at the end, depending on, I hate to say it depends, but it sort of depends on the situation. But the deal here is that we don't want to introduce a bias right away. We want you to tell us about who you are and what you do. Tell us about that first. And at any point in time, if we're asking a question and somebody goes, I really don't feel comfortable in answering that, then they don't have to answer it. That's never putting them on a spot where they feel they're being compromised in any way. But a lot of times I'll say, I have a question to ask you and I'm not sure if this is okay. And then they'll listen to it and they'll be like, oh, I'm so glad you asked that question. It's just funny how they have this reaction of like, woo, you're asking me. I want to answer it. And you love that because you're starting to create that relationship. It's making it personal then, which I just love. I'm sorry, it's a total, what is it, you've got mail line, but everything should start with being personal. It should be personal. That's why we're humans. I'm not trying to separate the distance and put something big in front of you and say, I don't want to look at you. I don't want to deal with you. But that's why we're humans. We want some human element. You might not be the kind of person who wants to go, Danny, I want to spend every day with you. That's not what I'm saying either, right? But the key is I want to have some interaction so I do know, so that I do keep you guys in check. And I understand that that's who I'm trying to cater to when I create anything. Because you are the reason that I'm loving what I do. And that's got to be there. Does that help? Yeah, I love these questions. Yeah. Hi there.
Hi, I'm Mickey, and I'm part of a cooperative that does web development. And I find that this is kind of segmenting your life, bringing humanity to work. Why isn't it all through your life?
Oh, I love it.
Being in a cooperative has changed my life so that now I don't break up my life into work and play, and
Brilliant.
I don't segment the parts of my life. It's all one, and we are able to pretty much choose clients that we wish to work with, and they're clients we are actually interested in what they're doing. We're not just building a website.
Love it.
We get to a personal phase very quickly by being interested in the thing. And I do this in my life also. I found out that I come from a cooperative family just because my parents always included me in discussions when I was little. It wasn't like, oh, don't ask the kids where they want to go, you know, or do or eat or whatever. We were always a member of the family. So I've always brought all my ideas to the table. And this is phenomenal way to connect and get or find clients that you actually resonate with by getting to know someone. And I relate it all to that game we probably played when we were children. It's called concentration. We have all the cards and you flip over and there's a jack here and oh, there was a jack over here. I'm constantly doing that in my mind so that I can bring good connections to other people that aren't even involved in my work.
Love
you know,
it.
I'm like, that guy liked peanut butter. I remember someone, oh yeah, that guy likes it too. You guys maybe have something to talk about. You know, and it may go on and never be in my life again, but it's kind of a human connective tissue. And I don't think you should limit it to your work. I think it should spill all over the place.
I love it.
Do you think that
I
too?
love it. And
This
actually
is
my argument is
living
that
it.
I believe that we do it more outside of work, but we find it hard to bring it inside to work.
Yeah.
And I think it should be everywhere. I totally agree with you. And I'm smiling because you talked about peanut butter and jelly, but I'm typically connecting people for mixing drinks. So we'll talk afterwards. But I love it. That's what it should be, because that's when it all becomes fun. It's not, that's when work doesn't become work.
Yes.
It's just an extension of the fun. I love it. Agree. Wholeheartedly.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. This question is for Mickey, who asked the last question. Could
Oh,
you
there you go.
explain to us more about your cooperative? How does that differ from like a regular agency?
It's okay.
It's totally different from an agency because as a cooperative, there are 4 of us and we're all owners of the company. We own the company and we do the work. And we're just an LLC that operates as a cooperative, and that's defined in our bylaws and our governance. 1 worker, 1 vote. We operate on consensus, but every cooperative does not have to. You can define on, you know, majority rules or whatever you'd want your cooperative to be. But the point is, we're all cooperating. We're all communicating at all points, which your boss goes in an office and decides things and comes out and tells you about it and may give you some choices, but it's not like you all go into a room and you come out with, you come out with something that you're all invested in and that you're all moving forward in, and no one's just doing it to make money or to use their skill. You're all learning and involved in it, and you learn other people's shortcomings and help them get better at that. Like, I'm the only non-coder in my cooperative, but these guys are just so generous with their brilliance that even when I'm doing, screwing stuff up, they're like, you're doing good. You haven't run out of the room with your hair on fire yet. You're doing good. And they encourage me, so I learn more about stuff I've thought was icky. I don't want to learn that dot-dash stuff. But now, when we have a client that I really love, like we have a new client that I'm working on, and it's something I'm really invested, I do want to learn some of that stuff so that I can be more helpful to them and take some pressure off of some of our team members too at times.
How many of you are coders in here, just out of curiosity?
Coders.
Developers, everybody is? Well, there's other people too. I mean, I believe there's UX designers and other disciplines that are represented, right? So do you find that it's easy for you to be able to think about the people who actually consume your offerings? Okay. And it does depend on the person, but do you find that you're given that ability and given that awareness in your organizations? And again, questions that I'm always curious about, so I'm just asking it. Yeah. Oh, sorry. He's got the mic, yeah.
Sorry, just for, I guess, throw it as an open question. You asked, how we feel we can, understand and connect with the users. And we definitely all try to put ourselves in the position of the people who will be using the software we're writing or the designs we're making. But how many people actually have, bringing in people who aren't you, who aren't your client, who aren't your colleagues, who, someone who is actually having more of the first time they're hitting a website or an application experience, and actually bring that in as a regular part of the process. Because I've known for, a very long time that's what we should be doing. I have not yet managed to incorporate that as a regular thing into, I'm work with Mickey at Agaric, into Agaric's web development practice. And I'd like to, and I'd like to know what people are doing. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I think there's a great article, and if anybody wants to, I'd love to, share ideas afterwards as well. But there's a great article about why it is so important for us to actually bring in that new thought. Because if we don't actually, at the most basic level, this was actually an article written by, I'm trying to remember the woman's name from Cooper Design, and it was beautifully written. I actually have it if anybody wants it. I'm happy to share it with you as well. It wasn't Kim. It was actually somebody else on staff. But the key of it is that if you don't actually expose yourself, it's at the most basic level. It's like if you don't expose yourself to difference, then your brain will actually never reshape itself. It'll never grow. It'll never learn. So the example that she gave in that article that was beautiful was, if I say, to somebody, so now you have a raison d'être, right? And you're like, great, Meena, I don't speak French, right? However, at this moment in time, if you go, but what is, some of you might not know what raison d'être is, right? So you might go, well, I don't know what that is. But if at that very specific moment in time you learn, because somebody next to you goes, and you get the answer, what has your brain now done? Next time somebody says that same phrase, it's going to have learned it. And that is, at the most basic level, what we do with trying to be inspired by people. You have people come in, you have them tell you stories, you have, a chance to go and see them in context, whatever that situation is. But by doing so, you actually might not say, well, I really didn't do a lot with them, but your brain has actually grown. It's seen things being done differently. It's seen possibly a different perspective. That is so incredibly important. A lot of times, for any of you who might be wondering, that's nice, Meena, how do you actually get people to take on this type of research? And believe it or not, a lot of times what we do is we will involve this as a motivational aspect. When you do research and people come out into the field with us, or they conduct the research in a facility and it's all planned and they're part of the action, it's a very kind of collaborative group format, they go away feeling happier, excited, inspired. We have HR actually come and participate in our sessions to say, those people, they're really happy now. And guess what? They're going to spread the happiness. There's lots of love to go around. We can share it. And it's such a nice thing for them to be able to share that, and for the company to be able to see that sometimes you don't need a foosball table. It can be something a little bit easier and simpler that's just human-to-human connection. Sorry.
Well, I just wanted to add to that in answering Ben's question. I think that what comes across in this that's so important with all of us in our individual disciplines is that the more we teach our colleagues about what we do, the more they can bring that into their own practice. So,
absolutely.
I came to Isavera a couple of months ago as sort of trying to bring design into an organization that's all developers, and so there's only one of me, and there's a whole bunch of developers there. So if I don't sort of bring design to them and teach them how to incorporate it in their process, or teach them about research and empathy and these things, then they all become ambassadors. Even if they may not do it themselves, they bring it into how they behave and how they think, and it exposes them to that. So they're always more sensitive to it, and we bring everybody up a level when we do that, and we share that amongst our own team members.
I love that thought. And I totally agree. It's partly back to what the gentleman back there was saying. There was a choice. And sometimes you got to push for it. Sometimes you don't want to just be corralled into a situation where they go, sorry, I have no, I'm not a nice person. I'll put it right out there. When it comes to these kind of negotiations, I get very, very like, I'm sort of looking at you now. When you say, I'm sorry, we don't have enough time, great. Once, not a problem. The second time, if you tell me we don't have enough time, we need to have a little chit chat because you already said that to me. And if you say it to me the third time, then I'm sorry, then something's missing. You're not doing a very good job of what you're supposed to be doing. And let me tell you why. And I'll sit people down and I'll say, it's a scheduling thing. So do you ever tell people, which I'm sure developers hear all the time because I used to be a developer way back when, which is why I can speak to that world. You don't want to be told, well, I'm giving you 3 weeks and now, by the way, I've reduced it to a week. You don't just generally do that without good reason. And if so, then there's got to be some rationale behind that reason even. The key is everything just needs to be planned. You need to think about what you're getting out of something too. What's the value that comes back? Sadly, research has been one of these things that has been pushed to the side or has been minimized, or it's way at the end of the process where you've already got the product in your hand. You're like, do you like it? And you're like, yep. And they're like, check, done. It's not going to yield us anything. That to me is a waste of money then. Go take the team out and have a good dinner somewhere and enjoy something. There's no point in doing research at that point in time. So the key is to really do it up front so it's inspiring, so that it does make a difference to the team. Because I've seen the difference and I've seen the change that it does make with the team where people just get so much more invested. Like they want to make this the most fabulous product because now they've seen. And we haven't even gone, I never mentioned a single medical project because that's where emotion just kicks in high gear. And it makes a difference to people. You see people who have self-injectors now who are scared about injecting themselves with RA medication for arthritis. And you suddenly realize they're looking at you in your eye and they're going through their whole regime of how they have to make sure it's in a certain place in their fridge and that they have this candle, and when they light the candle, it has to burn down, and that's when they know it's warmed up enough for the medication to go in. Guys, it doesn't get more emotional than that when you start to see that this is something that some people have been doing since they were like 5. And people will tell me something, I've been doing this since I was 5, I don't care, needles are needles, it doesn't matter. And then there'll be other people who are so scared that while they show us how they're injecting themselves, they'll pick it up and take it out and put it back in somewhere else again, and I'm freaking out, by the way. That's real. That's the reality. I can't make that kind of stuff up, and I can't pretend to do a user story on anything. I can't go that route if I don't understand the totality of that experience for them. So it's so important. It makes it meaningful. I really cannot stress that one enough. One more question.
Okay, so this kind of goes on to what Jason was talking about, which is buy-in from the people who you're explaining the research to. A lot of research is really important, but also in conveying that research to people that are implementing it, I think experience plays a large part too.
Yes.
Not just the experience from the people you got the answers from when doing research, but your own experience in conducting that research across multiple audiences. So I guess my question to you, Jason, is actually, how do we facilitate buy-in on all the research and the efforts that have been put into, delivering a product to your customers or your users, rather than working within the constraints that we have, like the 2 weeks to get those 3 products out, right? I think it's gone down from 4 weeks in your example to now 2. But we have to work within these constraints. So how do you get buy-in on that?
Well, I'm very quickly going to give this back to you because I'm betting that you're going to say kind of the same thing, which is get people to come watch one test. See it in person. Watch your product fail in the hands of a real user. And that's being able to explain the why behind the research, I think is kind of everything, because otherwise it's an opinion. But research yields data in the form of anecdotes.
And research to me definitely, and I know you mentioned testing as an example, testing to me is at the very end. We're talking way back up in the front. So bring it up in the front. Plan for it. Absolutely spot on. Plan for it. But the key is make sure people are a part of that process. Because a lot of times we also realize that people think you can just whip up research and anybody can do it in a week and it'll be done. There's so much, I know, as we giggle happily, there's so much detail that goes into it. And there is care and attention that has to be paid because these are humans that we're interacting with, so we do have to pay attention to the details. But the key is if we give it the planning that it needs, agile, non-agile, doesn't matter, it all works just fine. It just needs to be given its due diligence like anything else. But the rewards that you get out of it are tenfold. They just need to be given that awareness. And our goal in doing all of this, and I can share with anybody who's interested in more of this, there's a framework that we put together that helps us communicate this to stakeholders, because sometimes it is hard if they're not in an environment or haven't sort of partaken of an environment where they encourage research. It is hard to figure out, where does this exactly fit? Can you help me understand this? So we actually have a framework that we put together that has yielded so much positive result in terms of, I get it. This is a little bit more complicated. This is not just a standard test that we're running now. You're talking about understanding the behaviors. And I'm like, that's what we said in the beginning, but now something is clicked inside here. That's what we need. And they're a part of everything we do. They come out into the field with us. And yes, that is a demand, but once they've gone out, it only takes once. Back to what I think Brian, right, was saying earlier. Jason, was saying earlier. And I think that's so, so important for people to be educated about it. But if we as researchers, back to the enabling bad behaviors part, if we keep on saying, oh, we can do it in a week, no problem, then, sorry, this is not nice to say, but who's the doofus? Right? That's just letting people stomp all over you and go, okay, sure, I'll do it, because we're so desperate to do it. But let's do it the right way. It has to be done credibly. Otherwise, that's when things can go really bad, because you're taking good data and doing bad things with it.